1 sec. All right, awesome. Well, James, go ahead and take it away. And so everybody who's joining us, we've got about 10 or 12 of James's images here. So we're going to kind of get a great little portfolio review. And I would say James will give us some information about how each image was created, and then have the opportunity for us to ask questions and find out any tricks and techniques that he's using here to advance our game. So we got this first one. James, tell us a little bit about this shot.
Well, this is I grow flowers. I do a lot of different things. I grow flowers, and these just happened to be nodding at me one day, and so the light was nice, and I went outside and I kind of threw a little backdrop on them and cut them off and put them in a little vase. And anyway, this is off a 4x5 Tri-X film. I shoot Tri-X pretty much all the time. I shoot everything, but I like Tri-X. And I just decided to make these into a Bromoil. And I have a friend named František Strohal up in British Columbia, and he's just an awesome oiler. And so we swapped some prints and stuff, and so he sold me. He's doing oil prints now, so he sold me a lot of his remaining stock of Burger and Foma, and so I learned it pretty fast, and I was doing real well until I ran out of Foma and Burger, and now I'm struggling trying to coordinate everything together and start making oil prints. But this is a 4x5 on Tri-X, and I'm pretty sure it's the Foma paper, and it's one of my favorite. I really like pictorialism. Pictorialism to me is just it's just so beautiful. I've been photographing for about 40 years, doing bromoils for I think around 10 years, and thrown away way more than I ever got to keep. I started having problems with white spots on Ilford and stuff, so I still have some Ilford, and I mean some paper left from František, and so I just have kind of collected a whole bunch of them. I've given a bunch away and sold a few, and so this is what I've got. So this is my sunflowers, the kiss, so the flower kiss, flower kissing flowers. I've named it a couple of different things depending on where it's going.
Nice. And do you have any hypotheses on where those white spots come from? What the cause of those are?
It could be coming through the back. I never had the issue with the older paper. I just had the issue when I started trying to use the Ilford, and then a couple times I did have some trouble with the Burger, and it really frustrated me because you get these big, huge white spots. But on my initial attempts at oil prints, I had huge spots. I mean, I followed the forget what the guys. Oh, Studio Q. I was kind of following his way of making paper and making the oil paper, and I started getting massive white spots all over the place. Dan and I experienced that, and I don't know. I really don't know where it's coming from. It just seems to me that the matrix won't take the ink. It just won't. So it's got to be really swollen with water, and because it comes right off. So whatever the issue is, it's swollen with water. It's not a blister. It's actually in the coating, and it's just really swollen with water in those areas, because you're on the surface of the gel. When you're coating, you're on the surface of the gel, and that's where the ink won't stick. So for something to be coming through, I don't know what the it's not for me, for my white spots. It's not a blister. It's an actual white spot, different sizes, Um, when I when I was using the Ilford, all along the edge of the paper, it was like a coating mark. It was real wavy. Do you remember that, Dan?
Yeah.
You saw that? It's
Yeah.
really wavy.
Yeah.
As a photographic print, it's not wavy at all. It's a beautiful photographic print. But then when it's bleached and tanned and then washed and then dried and then re-soaked, and you start putting ink on it, it's like a coating issue. Like there's maybe something in the coating because they run it through the same uh, machinery as their super coated paper. And I know that you can't ink super coated paper. At least I haven't been able to ink it successfully. And you get these big white areas. So I don't know if it's actually in the coating or yeah. I just haven't really.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. So it could be residual hardener from the previous batch.
Yeah, well, it's the one or two of the edges will be real wavy, and so the border on two of the edges will be really wavy, and you can't get ink on that border. You just can't get there's nothing. I mean, I've soaked paper for 2 hours at 100 degrees to where it's the emulsion started lifting off commercial paper, and it didn't affect it at all. I just couldn't get ink to stick to it. So it's my white spots, may be different than other people's white spots. So this is an old mission that they've destroyed because they had to retrofit it, and they all of this garden is gone. In the background is a pool, a fountain and a pool. That's still there, but everything else that you're seeing is gone as far as vegetation is concerned. They trimmed the trees way back. They just took all of the ambiance out of the mission. So now I go by there, and I've stopped a few times and took a few photographs and just threw the negatives away. It was just garbage. It used to be really beautiful. It was old. There was moss all over it. It was just really beautiful. And now it's been re-whitewashed and steam cleaned and patched up, and all the ambience is gone. But again, this is Tri-X, and this is probably, if I remember right, this is Foma paper, the 123, and all of my mission images from that time I just love them.
Awesome. And this has a really soft look to it. Are you inking up with foam?
No, brush. I'm pretty much a brush worker. I do use these little foam makeup little dabbers.
Yeah, little finger.
Yeah, the little things like that. And I use saran wrap, and I use the rubber erasers and stuff like that. But by and large, this is all ink. I have a problem re-wetting and inking the foam papers. When I try and re-wet it, all of a sudden the ink starts lifting off. I think the gel, the coating, the emulsion is too wet, and it hasn't dried out enough. So I'm gonna, when I start using the last of my Foma paper, I'm gonna make 8x10s out of the 1620 that I have. I'm gonna start letting it dry for a day, and then re-wet it and see if that can help. And these are all these are the best that my cell phone can do, because, or actually my tablet can do, because this is actually it's actually not quite what the image was, what the print looked like. There's a lot more contrast to it. It's still soft, but there's a lot more contrast to it.
Nice. Yeah, it's got it does kind of a soft, low contrast feel. But yeah, this one, like, I love the amount of detail that we have in the brushwork and stuff like that.
There's
Sorry,
yeah,
James, I missed that. Do you mainly use the brush, or do you roller some as well?
no, I use a brush.
Yep.
I use a brush when I do the roller. it just never really came out the way I wanted it to.
Yep.
Mainly because I get the ink on there and then I have to do the brush work. By the time I get the ink on and then start using the brush, it's dry around here. What ends up happening is I start flattening everything out. This becomes a flat mass. This becomes just a flat mass. There's in the print, there's sunshine on these needles here, and on these needles here, and it's not as flat as it appears. You can actually see the brickwork and stuff in here. When I was using the roller, everything became real flat. And I like a nice 5-stop range in my Bromoils. I like the softness, but it just wasn't working for me.
So with the foam of 123, would you soak it and then do the entire inking in one pass and not
all one pass?
Wow. Yeah. See, I've never experienced paper like that. I can have to do 4 or 5 soaks to get a final Bromoil with the David Lewis paper I've been using.
Yeah, I just when I tried to do a second pass or a third pass, it just it flattened things out, and a lot of ink lifted off the highlights. Where I like highlights. I like a lot of subtlety in the highlights. I just don't like just a blank. I don't like just this to be blank or
right
up here and stuff. I like a lot of detail in my images, but I do like the softness. So it's just it's just me.
Nice.
And then this is an old barn. Haven't been back to see if it's been taken down or not, but there's a lot of old towns in our gold mining regions all along the Western Sierra in California. And this was just an old barn, and to the right is somebody's house and an above ground pool and stuff. This scene is just a real small little scene that I happened to drive by, and it was had just finished raining. It was raining off and on, and it just finished, and so everything was kind of wet, and it looked contrasty with the wetness. So I stopped and I photographed it, and it just has always turned out really nice. This is my Halloween picture. When it's Halloween time, I hang this on the wall, and I like.
What size is the print, James?
These are all 11 by 14s.
Wow.
Yeah, this is that's the size I normally print, 11 by 14. 8 by 10. It's just a little too small for what I do.
Very brave of you.
Yeah, I've tried to do 8 by 10s and 5 by 7s and stuff. It's just they're a little too small. They come out nice, but they're just, for me, they're a little too small. I don't usually wear my glasses, so maybe that's the issue. But yeah, and again, there's a lot more contrast to this. There's a lot more detail up here in these larger branches and the wood post and stuff, and there you can actually see the shingles on the roof here and the roof up here. You can actually see the shingles and stuff. So it's just low
what
contrast.
Ink are you using? What ink are you using?
1796, the graphic chemical and ink graphic ink, and I haven't used the 1802 too much. It's a little harder, and so I just haven't. I've been working so much on the oil prints, and I haven't been able to really do much with the oil prints. I get, they're okay prints. They're just not what I do, so I throw them away. If they don't come out just the way I have planned, they go in the trash.
I do the same thing. Otherwise, I would accumulate just dozens and dozens of really bad prints.
Yeah. I have an old ghost mill crushing mill, ore crushing mill in Colorado, and I have a really beautiful negative of it, and I have made beautiful prints in silver from it, and I've got two bromoils out of it. It's just that there's aspen leaves that are golden, or they're white in the print in the bromoil, and there's a lot of granite there, and then there's some aspen trunks, and then there's a lot of detail in it. It's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of detail in it, and I'm just really struggling. I can't get an oil print out of it at all. I get these big white blotches, and
Right.
some of the aspen go up into the sky, and there's a cloud there, and then a dark sky right next to it, and so I can't separate everything the way I want. So they just go in the trash. One of these days, I'll get the gel just right, and I'll get the soaking just right, and I'll make a good print. And when I do, I'll be real happy.
Richard, do you have
Gosh.
same issues?
I have no issues really. I think what I find the hardest thing is to get the right negative, and I think, as you know, I only do digital negatives. I mean, all my images are taken originally on film. They're mainly on 2 1/4 square film, which I scan. All my film work is always scanned into the computer, and then I make my digital negative. But it's absolute. I mean, Dan was showing me some negatives earlier on that you held up, and I'm sure they look great, Dan. I think that's exactly what would work well for oil printing. And I think the problem is, if you make a digital negative that looks a good traditional negative, then it's really hard to get a good print. But what I always do is completely take the contrast. What I do, I optimize my image on screen to how I would like the final picture to look. And then I essentially just take all the contrast out, but I make sure I've got detail in the highlights and the shadows and a few tones in between. I mean, I'm never going to get 20 or 21 different a tonal range of 21 shades, but as long as I've got 5 or 6 tones, then that will really suit most of my images. And keeping it fairly thin, I find fairly dense negatives more difficult. But I mean, I've got hundreds of them just around me. I mean, I don't know whether you can see anything, but these are all digital negs that I've really flattened out. Well, you probably can't see, but they should all produce pretty much first time oil prints. And I find the exposure can be very varied. You don't have to get an exact exposure for ultraviolet, and anywhere between 30 seconds and 180 seconds, I can probably get a very similar print. I mean, it's so crazy. It just contradicts really all the rules, but
See,
I don't have
Richard explains oil printing as this utopia that we have all been.
Yes, absolutely. It shouldn't work, but I mean, I'm taking up all your time, James, but
okay, that's all right.
I find, I mean, I won't use photographic paper. I use my own watercolor paper, and the important thing is to scald it before you sensitize it, and somehow that kills the paper and allows it to be tame for me. So then just gelatin it. I never have problems with spots. But the important, I mean, we were talking earlier about paper curling and bending, but as long as you tape it down, I just use a sheet of glass, tape it down with wet, with plain paper, sticky tape with water, and then dry it for 2 or 3 days. And I feel your frustration with what you all have been saying, is that I don't have those problems, and which is why I'm so crazy about oil printing. And
Is the scalding? Does the scalding force all the air out of the paper? Is
yes,
that
absolutely, James. I mean, I'm certain that's what it does. I mean, it completely. I think it soaks the paper so much with. It essentially kills the paper and takes and just leaves you the fibers. It also allows the gelatin to settle inside the paper somewhat, so it's really making a good grip on the paper. And I can just simply pour the gelatin on and almost leave gravity to level the fluid. I do very little gelatin leveling. I think in the video you saw me using a bit of a comb just to pull it to the edges, and that really gives me a perfect coating. Very rarely have any problems.
Yeah, if I don't get that comb in there and spread that ink, I mean the gelatin out very quickly, I preheat the metal plate that it's laying on. I get all kinds of waviness. Yeah, it's got to go on real quick, and I've got to get it to the edges real quick. Then I let it
You've
sit.
got about a minute. I mean, a minute is really adequate. And
I'm talking, if I don't get it spread out within 15 seconds, it's just
right.
garbage.
Hmm.
Yeah, because the gel cools too quickly.
Yeah, I heat my gel to 120 or 130 max.
Yeah.
The paper is the paper has had a pre-soak in room temperature water for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yep.
10 minutes max. I then dab it dry with kitchen towel.
Yep.
And then I think it depends on the temperature of your room, because we're always freezing over here, and if the metal sheet that you mentioned, if that's really cold, then you will have a problem with your gelatin setting too quick. But
Yep.
if the metal sheet is about room temperature, 15, 20 degrees C, then I've got at least a minute of pulling it back with a comb.
Yeah, I don't.
Let me tell you a tip, if I might interrupt. I'm sorry. I used to. I have a inox pipe, very a big one, is maybe almost 1 meter. I close it in on one side with some cork. It's open the other side. I fill in hot water before I do the coating.
Yeah.
I close the other side with another cork, and I spread easily the gelatin.
The gelatin.
Yeah, and I have a lot of. I have the time that I want to spread it. Finally.
What percentage gelatin is that?
What percent is 12%?
12%, right?
12%.
That's pretty thick.
Yeah, that's why I do the spread with some pressure in order to obtain a very thin layer, and I even can show you. Do you follow me? That's a pipe, inox pipe. Inox pipe. Close one side with the cork and the other side open. I fill in the water, hot water inside. I close with another cork, and I have that warm pipe to do the job for a few minutes.
Yeah.
This is my coated paper where I lay it, and it took 5 days to dry.
5 days. Yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. In
dry.
the winter.
Yeah. Well, what I do is I just clamp the edges with wood, and it doesn't matter. It still comes out real wavy like this. But this is this is the paper that I hang. I just tried this 2 weeks ago, and I hung it. I did what František Strohal does, his method and his formulation and stuff, and it's nice and flat and stuff. But he says that he double coats it, so now I have to figure out how I'm going to double coat it. But yeah, there's all these little issues that just
Yes.
really frustrate me. But as far as the negative, I have an Epson 15,000 printer, and it prints real good, and I got a scanner and everything. So I get it on the computer here, and I make it exactly. I'm just learning the Photoshop stuff, but I get it exactly the way I want the print to look. And then I make it a good negative. The negatives are real good. I mean, I've been printing for 40 years. The negatives are really, really good. What I need to do is I need to actually put a series, like 5 sheets, and go for 5 minutes with my printer, 5 minute, 7 minute, 10 minute, 12 minute, 15 minute, and find out what a good exposure will be. So I can get it kind of close, and then I have to go through the inking process, the dichromate process and the inking process. So there's all these steps that I have to get coordinated, and I just haven't got it done yet. But the negatives I've been working with the Ghost Mill, they just haven't come out. I haven't figured out whether it's not enough exposure. If I have read and read and read where most of the gum bichromate people and some oilers use a green tinted negative that blocks the light better than the kind of the brownish reddish color. So I've got all these. Everything's in play right now, and it's getting closer, but it's not as good as the FOMA paper or the burger paper, and that's what's frustrating me right now, because I haven't done anything. I've been printing for years. I used to print nearly every day, unless I was backpacking or riding my bike somewhere or surfing. I printed almost every day, and when I started inking, I did at least 4 or 5 prints a week in my little motorhome that I lived in. And it just now I'm frustrated because I have all these plans and stuff, and I bug Dan here endlessly about how frustrated I am because I want to get this stuff going here. I have all these negatives, and so anyway, this is another 4x5. This scene doesn't exist anymore. It was an old barn, 1870 something or 80 something. I got it written down somewhere. In the California Gold Country, and it was on the way to Yosemite. And this oak tree, was at least 1,000 years old. I mean, it's a massive oak tree. It's quite a distance from this fence. But I went up there. I was going to photograph it again. I went on a photographic journey, and I had all these places that I was going to go to. And I drove by it, and I turned around, and I drove by it again. I turned around, and there's a Chevron gas station there now, and I finally figured out that there has been some houses built and stuff like that around there, but I figured out that they tore this barn down and cut this tree down, and they made a gas station out of it. That's what they do in California. That's what they do in America. We just tear stuff down that's been there for 150 years and just make another gas station or another housing tract.
Wow.
So I forget, I think it was you, Kirk, that somebody put an image up, and it may have been Dave, that was this kind of a stonish building on a little dirt pathway, and I really, really liked it. And I made a comment that we don't have anything like that, here in America. And and everybody said, "Oh yeah, you guys, we got ghost towns and stuff." No. I used to visit a ghost town named Bodie. It's real famous, and everybody's photographed it. And I've been photographing it for a very long time. And it used to be beautiful, and now it's all been rebuilt. So all those sway back buildings and all those crumbling fences and all that stuff are no longer. Everything's new. It's got old lumber that they tear a building down. They basically build a big heavy structure inside on the footprint, and then they slap all this old wood back onto it. So it looks really cool to most people. To me, it's gone. So most ghost towns are like that around here. So anyway, so this is 4x5. I think this is FOMA paper, and yeah, I just really I like old things. This is Bodie. This is an old wagon that's no longer there. They took it away and they rebuilt it, and it went to some other ghost town someplace, probably a Disneyland ghost town. But I was right up. This is 4x5 with a 90mm lens, and I had my head up against the building and the camera right in my face in order to get this whole scene here. This whole scene, I was crushed up against this building, and
So are you primarily shooting 4x5?
This is 4x5, yeah. And
is that your go-to for photography?
I shoot 4x5. I shoot 4x5. I have an 8x10, an real old 8x10. I shoot that. I don't shoot it as much as I used to, but I used to shoot it a lot. I started out with 2 1/4, and I started out. I didn't do black and white. I did color Cibachromes. That's what I started with. That's what I learned how to develop film. I did color Cibachromes.
Wow.
And but then I saw John Sexton and Ansel Adams, and I just fell in love with black and white. So I rarely do color anymore. I haven't done color in years because I just really like the emotions of black and white. Color for me robs the scene of the graphic nature of the scene. The graphic nature of the scene is what brings me to it. Whereas color is color. It's you can see color all over the place, but the structure of the image is what I really like. So I used to belong to Professional Photographers of America, and I took this image as a silver print to the big meeting and had all these professional photographers who make a fortune out of it. And because these lines are going this way and these lines are going this way, they told me it wasn't a good print. And I said, well, if these lines went this way and these lines went this way, how would you visually see, the difference, the depth here? There's a lot of depth here. And how would you see that? Oh, you just don't have competing lines going, and that's about when I stopped going to PPA. Because, yeah, I mean, I've been looking at, I look at images all the time, and this gives this image depth, because there's really no depth here. You can't tell how far away it is, but you can here, with this leading line up in here and these shadows and stuff, you can tell that there's quite a separation here. But if all of these lines were going the same way, this wouldn't tell you what the depth is, because this wheel is almost the same size visually as this wheel. Mm-hmm. So this is what, and this right here, this triangle right here, is what actually visually give you depth. And this one right in here actually is what gives you depth. So anyway, so that was just an aside, I'm sorry. But this is great. 4x5 and Tri-X. And it was probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the shadows were just beautiful. And the silver image is a lot more contrasty. This has a lot of contrast in it. There's a lot of contrast in each individual blade of dry grass and stuff. It's just, I just really like this image, which no longer exists, unfortunately.
And what do you typically develop your film in?
I use Dectol.
Dectol?
Yeah, Dectol is my go-to.
And then what about?
I'm sorry, D76. I was thinking of something else. D76. Or Rodinol. I've used it all. I have all I have drawers and cabinets full of chemistry around here. But it's just real. When I was making a lot of prints, it was just easy to mix up just a batch that I needed. And I find it works really, really well with contrasty images. Andrew Rodinal also. I do stand development and split development and a lot of water bath in real contrasty situations. I do a lot of water bath, and I find it works really, really. It's really linear. It doesn't start out fast and slow down. It doesn't start off slow and get faster. It's the same speed all the way through. And I do a lot of water bath. When there's contrasty scenes, I do a lot of. That's how I hold my development. That's how I hold my contrast down to 5 stops. 5-stop paper is, the negative has, up to 20, 22, 23 stops of latitude if developed right. But 19 is kind of average, so I need to compress that down to get the detail in the 5 stops that I want.
So yeah, and then for paper developer, have you found
Dectol? Yeah, Dectol. Yeah, I've used the I'm forgetting names right now, but I've used the warm tone developer when they used to make it. I guess they still make it. The warm tone developers and Dectol. Just that Dectol is so easy for me to soup up. I just make just enough to develop the paper that I'm going to be developing. I don't leave it sit around. I throw it away. PMK Pyro is another go-to for film development. I really, really like the PMK Pyro. I find that the real small stuff in here, in these little sides here, this is what really turns me on. These little holes here, the way that this metal shined in the sunlight. There's all this detail all throughout, down in here and stuff. All this detail, and it's like self-sharp mask, unsharp masking, which I used to do all the time. But I find that it works really well, and when I don't redevelop, I find I don't have that interior halation that I think makes the pyros so good. And I forget the guy's name, PMK Pyro.
Hutchings.
What?
Gordon Hutchings.
Yeah, Gordon Hutchings. Gordon Hutchings came back and said, "Yeah, well, you don't need to redevelop it." So I started not doing that, and I printed side by side, and I found out, no, I really still believe that there is a difference, and it's just the little things. If you take a magnifier and you go on those 2 negatives, you can actually see the difference. There's halation in the redeveloped that's not in the grain, that's not in the non-redeveloped grain. So it's just something I do. It's not I don't tell people to do it and stuff. I just do it.
You told me to do it.
Yeah, I think it works.
He tells me to do a lot of things.
Well, if someday you'll come up here and we'll go through my dark room and my procedures, and we'll see. This is that mission again, and I usually this doesn't come out as grainy, but for some reason when I was doing this one, it really came out with this beautiful grain. And I really, really like it. There's a lot more contrast here and a lot more detail up in here. Like you can see this arch right here, and this arch right here. This is kind of a little more shadowed. This one's a little more shadowed. There's a lot of more detail in the actual print, but my tablet didn't really pick it up. But this is the way that this is the San Miguel mission, the same one as before. And but you can see all of the lily pads, and there were fish in here, and there are a couple of frogs croaking, and all this cattails and roses back in here and stuff. And now that's all gone. That's all it is just a a pond. There was no water in it. The pond doesn't work anymore because they completely came and destroyed this gorgeous, gorgeous photographic place. It just really, I drive by it all the time when I drive down to San Diego once a month or so to come visit Dan. I drive by it and it just breaks my heart, you know, when I remember how photographically beautiful it was, and it is no longer.
This is my version of it with foam emulsion and the sponges that I usually do for
Yeah.
application.
Yeah.
So it does look very different.
Trying to find a way to blow your your picture up there, Dan, but I
I
can't.
don't know how to do it. So anyway,
I don't either.
Can you can you put it closer up to the yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, see, there's a lot more contrast to it. You know,
Yeah.
the reflections in
wow.
the water and stuff like that. You know, it's a lot more detailed than it shows.
That's awesome.
And there's no sky to any of these. The sky is I print my own skies. I just ink it in. I use the Gear Spect or whatever his name was, the British guy.
Oh, Gray Spirit.
Yeah, that guy, man. I love his work.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to learn how to do that, but I follow his you know, with torn newspaper, and I ink and I ink and I ink and I ink, and so I get this stuff out of it. I use all kinds of little tiny tricks. You know, like you know, down in here, I wanted, you know, more. It was starting to get dry, so I wanted a little bit more contrast in here. So I took my eraser and started erasing some of this stuff, like this guy here and this guy over here and this little thing here. And I started erasing with my eraser, trying to get a little bit more detail, you know, instead of all of these being the same tonality, get in here and take little spots. And this one right here, I erased this one and these two over here and this little spot. And so I go in there, and as it's drying, I don't have much time. And I use those little tricks that really put a lot of detail into the image.
Awesome.
James, just so you know, James, we can't see your cursor when you're saying this spot.
Oh, I see. Okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
I got to run here, guys. So have a good rest of the meeting.
All
Have a
right.
good one,
Thanks,
man.
Dan.
Okay, bye.
So and this
We're gonna
is
run a
one of
little
the-
over just because we got a late start, but if anybody needs to hop off, feel free to do so and we'll have the recording.
Yeah, because I can go on for hours. This one is a foam roller. I didn't do a lot of brush work on this. I got a little bit too much of the brush in here, and so I backed off a little bit. So this is pretty much all foam, and then a makeup brush, you know, a really, really soft makeup brush. And just going in there, it was fairly wet still, so I still kept going around it, and it came out really, really smooth. Had a lot of detail, but it's
Yeah,
really
the detail in this tree is crazy.
Yeah, I liked how it came out. Haven't quite been able to replicate it. It could have just been the paper that day, or the temperature that day, or something. But it when I put it up against my silver print, boy, it's you know, fairly close. See how much detail's in there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really amazed me. You see this shadow here right in here. I don't know what caused that. It might have been, you know, a roller mark.
About here?
Yeah, it might have been a roller mark right in through here. The difference between here and here might have been a roller mark that I didn't get out of it. And there was another one someplace that was really obvious. I forget where it was, but yeah. So that may have been the edge of the roller that I didn't see at the time, and I didn't use the little makeup brush to smooth it out.
Yeah, I love this one.
And this is Bodie again. This is it no longer looks like this. So that car I had to rebuild every spring. I had to go around and find everything. the back fender and the body itself was there, but there was no seat, no steering wheel, no front fender, no that oil barrel. I had to go all the other side, all the other side of the all the way to the other side of the little town to grab that barrel and bring it back. And I used to rebuild this, and I knew the ranger that's in charge of this, and I didn't know him, real personally or anything, but he didn't mind me going and rebuilding this car. And this building is now a residence, and it's been completely rebuilt, absolutely completely rebuilt, and all that the sagebrush and stuff is all gone now, and the town has been basically beaten to death. There used to be maybe 2,000 people a year go through this town back in the 60s and 70s and even the early 80s. And then everybody and their brother, some newspaper or magazine said, "Oh, look at what we got in California." There's the last time I checked, about maybe 10 years ago, there had been 4 million people that had gone through, that had paid admission to get into this old ghost town. There's nothing here but buildings. You can't get into the buildings or anything like that, except for two. There's 2 buildings. You can get in the old church, and there's another building. I forget which one it is, but you can get in 2 of the buildings. But by and large, the buildings are off limits. Oh, this building right in the back, that square building, that's the kind of the museum. That's the other building you can get to. But now they've completely, this and that shed behind it, it has been completely demolished and rebuilt. They get a lot of snow up here, so it's called controlled decay or something like that. Anyway, it's all the old original lumber. May not have been on this building, but they rebuild the buildings with 4x4s inside, and a sub roof on it to keep the buildings from crushing. The car, it's no longer there. Don't know what happened to them. One year I went there and it was gone. They rebuilt the building and put a porch on it and a veranda, and a lot of stuff just gone. They're trying to make it like Disneyland. They had a huge parking lot now and stuff. So this image is 1620. Hold on a second. So this is the size of the image. I used to do a lot of 1620 images.
That's awesome.
That's it right there. But that's the size of it. It's
wow.
1620, and it came out real good. I really like how it came out. That's the mission from the other angle. Like I say, that no longer exists. You can't see the adobe blocks. It's all been replastered. The fence has been rebuilt. It's actually a gate, and it looks real modern, unfortunately. And again, it's 4x5 with tri-X, and it's a real good silver print. So I said, well, I'll make a bromoil out of it.
What kind of paper did you have for 16x20?
That was the FOMA paper.
FOMA?
Yeah, I had Frantisek Strohal sold me a whole bunch of paper, some 1620, some 11x14. So I'm very, very careful what I print on this paper, because I just can't get that size paper anymore. So it has to be a really nice image with a lot of detail and a story. And
yeah,
this mission was built in 1788, I think. 1788, 1789. That's how old this building is. And the big building in the back is the chapel, and it's a lot more modern. It's the 1800s, but this fence and the long building there are all 1789, 88, something like that. We have a string of missions in California that go from San Diego all the way up to San Francisco, and they're old Franciscan missions, and they're the original buildings in California, white buildings in California, and they're still extant. But the problem is they've been rebuilt so many times they don't look old. This was one of the few that looks old.
And did you say that Franisek is moving over to oil printing as
Oh,
opposed?
he is oil print. That's what he does. He's been doing it for years. Yeah, he was a bromoilista like me, and and the paper was disappearing, and he wasn't having he was having issues with the paper, so he learned the oil process. I don't know quite the history of how he learned it or who he learned it from or anything, but he's got it down pat. Man, his images are beautiful. They're just gorgeous, multicolor images too.
Yeah, I saw that.
This is another foam. This is a 1620, but it's 20 inches long by 12 high, something like that. And this is a roller, and then softened it with the brush.
Oh, nice.
Lovely.
And this is Bodie again. This is the way it used to look.
Well, I love how all the highlights kind of have this blooming effect to them.
Yep. Yeah, that was a really, really bright day.
Goes to show you, you can get a good image no matter the time of day or the conditions. You know.
Well, it's a really dense negative, and all those real dark shadows there between the wheels and underneath it in the carriage and the boards and stuff. That's very difficult to print. It takes a lot of dodging to bring those out as a from the negative as a print, because this is on FOMA. And I think I can tame it a lot more easily with digital. I can get in there and bring a lot more stuff out in digital. But
Yeah.
they take that truck and they hide it in a special building that they've constructed. It looks like an old building, but they've constructed it, and they get that out of this weather. It's a 1926 something or other, Bradley or something like that's not a Dodge, but something like that. And they bring it out in early summer. They bring it out and they leave it until right before the first snowfall, and then they tow it. I don't even know if it has an engine in it anymore, but they tow it and put it back in the building. And so it doesn't look like, if you look behind the truck at that building behind the truck, that's corrugated iron. And nowadays it's all wood. They completely rebuilt it, and they as a photographer, because I know they have to arrested decay, that's what they call it. I know they have to, in order to have the town, it would have been crushed decades ago by the snow, so they have to rebuild it. But they took a lot of the photographicness out of it. The beauty is really gone, the old time beauty of it. So so I hardly ever go there anymore.
My wife and I are looking to go to the UK in May of and that's going to be, I'm starting to scope out the different places that I want to stop off at. And
these are the guys to ask. They know.
I know, right? Yeah. See if I can coordinate a meetup with all the UK crew. Yeah,
that'd be great. I'd love to do that. I'll do it someday. I just have so much going on here, and COVID really killed us over here. I killed everybody all over the world, but it's just, I hesitate getting on, even thinking about getting on an airliner today. I'm happy doing what I do, and I live in the West. There's so much here. I haven't even gotten to the redwoods and photographed the redwoods. As far as Bromoil is concerned, there's a lot of big, tall trees that need my photographic attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, this is the last image, and Yeah, we're coming right up to about 11:20, so it's right at about an hour for the chat, so that's perfect. Any last words or questions from anybody?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I got all this paper. Today is my day where I'm gonna coat bichromate on the paper and get it ready to print.
Good
and
for you.
start inking. Yeah, testing day.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna stop recording here.
And sorry I was late. I just digital is beyond me. I was working